It's happening. It's happening. It's happening. It's happening! Oh, damn it. Hello everyone, Markystal here. It's been over a year since the last video now, and a good amount has happened in VR worth talking about, particularly in regards to this particular game. For those of you that have been keeping up with my recent videos, you'll know that there was an event in March for a quote-unquote alpha test of Sword Art Online by IBM. This turned out to be a marketing demo and not a full product or an announcement of anything of the sort. While disappointing, I think it's worthwhile to dive in a bit deeper to the matter to see what it is they were thinking. For 2 years running now, I've said the game aspect of Sword Art Online itself is possible to make, but we have no nerve gear to make it worth playing. With that being established, it places the burden of the matter to the other facets of the question. If we can, why aren't we doing so? Even without the nerve gear, several of you have voiced a desire for a regular Sword Art Online MMO or a VR MMO using our current technology. Being as IBM seemingly took a crack at it for a moment there, let's have a look at what they put forth and whether or not a VR MMO RPG like that could be made. I'll be using Daitsuki's coverage as a foundation here, though I'll only be using stills. If you'd like to see the full video, I'll have a link to their coverage in the description and give an annotation right here. Give it a watch, it's good stuff. With that, we have our battle plan. So once again, for 2016, can we make Sword Art Online today? Let's get started with this situation right from the beginning, down to their announcement. Their announcement of this seemingly came out of the blue, with a video promoting their upcoming event. The video was dramatic in tone, taking footage from the anime and using it as a backdrop to a narrative they were setting up, adding in their own flair to confirm their intention at the end. If Sword Art Online had a beta before its release, this is the alpha to that beta, so to speak. This kind of puts the target audience, us Sword Art Online fans, into active mode since it brings to mind the events of the show. The beta of Sword Art Online was available for 1,000 players. The final release had 10,000. It stands to reason that the supposed alpha would have even less, in this case 208. If you want to get in, you'll probably want to jump into the opportunity as soon as possible. When I look at this, I can't help but think they did a pretty good job generating hype right there. Their overuse of footage from the anime hurt a little bit, since it made it questionable whether or not their trailer was genuine or some fan mock-up, particularly with the unclear nature of their announcement. But their use of original elements garnered positivity, and the nebulous nature of the announcement did create enough mystery for even enthusiasts like me to start wondering what they had up their sleeves. They were also pretty smart to set the limit for the applications to the areas of Tokyo. As I've said many times before, our current networking technology restricts high-fidelity virtual reality experiences like Sword Art Online to short ranges per server. I'd expect that the first few years of an MMO of this type would most likely be restricted to its country of origin till it generates enough of a profit to be worth spreading out. I've seen this happen with some Korean MMOs, and this is by far the most likely circumstance to occur with this kind of a kit, if it ever occurred at all. Enough with that though. Let's get into their event and build. The event involved 4 steps with several items in between, which we'll regard as their system setup. The first item was a 3D scan of the participants, scanning their whole bodies in a T-pose and seemingly taking images at each angle briefly to generate a character model for use in the game. Looking at the results, I don't think the tech they demonstrated here was particularly impressive, save for the speed at which they generated the final product, which seemed to have been fully rigged and white-mapped as well as modeled for usage in the game right afterwards. 3D scanning technology is far more capable than what was demonstrated, and I suspect that the reason for the low resolution and detail is the time constraint of the event. In my video on how the nerve gear works, I explained that we have microwave-based technologies capable of sophisticated scans that can basically ignore the clothes the user has on and get a better idea of their topography, something which probably wouldn't fly at a more demo-oriented event like this, as is compared to the matter of security that it is in airport scanners. However, if we wanted better results, they could probably have used a better scan in order to get a much more sophisticated image. I've already seen full-body scans of humans that look outright photorealistic in VR, so we can be sure that if we really wanted to, fully digitizing the user for usage in VR is neither an impossible prospect nor a cost-prohibitive one. High-speed model rigging and weighting, however, is a bit more difficult, and I'd love to see IBM's tools for this described in more detail. If we wanted to use this kind of tech at home, the best route would be to take advantage of the Kinect or a smartphone app and make it so that you have the option of scanning your face into the game. Several games have already done this to mix results, though it is mostly a novelty feature for all intents and purposes. Kinect-based 3D scanners have been around for a while now, and smartphone-based apps likewise. They're both more than good enough to generate a point cloud for the application to process, so it's definitely viable. Next up was their Link Start step. Here they provided a pair of VR shoes, were guided to one of the 3 railed areas, and were equipped with a virtual reality headset composed of several combined components. The area was being observed by the Kinect 2.0 sensor, and they began the simulation by saying Link Start in unison. We'll go over the rig here. To this point, I still don't have any good grasp of why they needed VR shoes. I initially thought that they were supposed to be shoes for altering traction like those that some omnidirectional treadmills come with, but the control system behaves more like a small room scale setup than an omnidirectional treadmill, so apart from possible sanitary reasons, I don't see the point. It could be related to the sensor on it, probably an inertial measurement unit or an IMU, but with the Kinect, it would appear to be redundant to have that in use here. Then again, the rig has another redundancy here with the use of the Leap Motion as well as the Kinect for hand tracking, though I suspect this was done to get a much more accurate read on the hands, which seem to have a greater role in the sense of presence as compared to the rest of the body. Ever since their Orion update, Leap Motion has gained much more positive reviews from users, so it is possible that this usage was very reasonable within this optically based control system. On the note of optical controls, the Kinect seems to be the strongest mechanism at play here for control. The Kinect 2.0 is much more capable than the original Kinect, apparently having a latency in the realm of 60 milliseconds. This is pretty fast, though not a really good item for the threshold of immersion in head tracking. I'm genuinely curious as to its performance for tracking the body and legs and arms for room scale situations as compared to other solutions. It kinda makes me wonder whether or not a dual Kinect and dual head mounted or dock mounted Leap could be capable of. But then again, that's a matter for experimentation. In addition, there are 2 camera-like items on the front of the headset. I'm honestly not too sure what these are, though I think I've seen them elsewhere recently, and their dual nature kinda makes me wonder if they're a form of binocular pass-through system a la what the HTC Vive does. Overall, they seem to be using some of the best consumer tech available in the industry, but while I personally have other ambitions in mind for my setup's control solution, the only thing they lacked here were more advanced headsets and motion controls that would be present in things like the HTC Vive or Oculus Rift CV1. But neither of those was out at the time, so it's understandable that they may not have been able to integrate with them. It feels bizarre that a multi-billion-dollar company wouldn't be able to make their own advanced solution, but being that this turned out to only be a demo, it's not that surprising that they'd skimp out. Additionally, for a game like Sword Art Online, which requires large-scale world traversal, it may have been more logical to use something like the Omni, or any other omnidirectional treadmill solution, versus the current standing-in-place mechanism, since jogging in place or walking up against a barrier in a pseudo room-scale setup are not going to be doing any favors for maintaining presence. Beyond that, credit can be given that they used the DK2 within a decently sized area, though the lack of 360 tracking on the solution could have been a problem. I didn't really hear any mention of it though, so perhaps they used the Kinect as a secondary fallback if the head tracking on the Oculus Rift fell through. In our cases, if we use the updated Oculus Rift CV1 or an HTC Vive CV1, we wouldn't have any issues with that would require the need for any outside solutions outside of what could potentially be introduced in terms of occlusion by an omnidirectional treadmill setup. Lastly, I don't see in this rig very much of an audio solution. There are no visible headphones outside, so it's possible that the bicycle helmets may have either been a model that integrated speakers, or could possibly there have just been a pair of small earbuds obscured from sight from the viewers. Honestly, as long as you have a pair of decent headphones with decent quality sound reproduction, there is absolutely no concerns with headphones, unless you want to go for truly high fidelity audio using multiple driver headphones like the OSIC X headset that is being currently kickstarted. The microphone doesn't appear to be anything particularly special, and is probably only here just to pick up basic commands like Link Start, or even for teammate communication. It'd be great if an excellent solution like the Oculus Rift microphone were included in such a set, as the clarity of the audio can be very helpful towards fostering good online communication structures, especially where you don't have to mute everyone because their mic lets you hear their breathing, picks in tons of background noise, is tinny, poppy, or just plain old doesn't produce a comprehensible sound wave. For the setup they were going with, the only thing I can fault here is the lack of an omnidirectional treadmill for this kind of a setup, since a game like Sword Art Online would best be served in our current tech via the use of something like that, versus the current techniques they're employing in their system. Taking all of this together, it really makes the price tag something to behold. I'll set up 2 price tags based on the elements and the sophistication required, but neither is going to end up being cheap here. a custom-made, low-quality headset with IR LEDs similar to the Oculus Rift constellation mechanism that is either tracked via its own IR camera or leverages whatever initially in place Xbox One control infrared system had, then it would probably be at a price tag to be around $400 or $600 at cost, reminiscent to the Oculus Rift, or if they just went with one. For controls, using mainly the Leap Motion and Kinect and the Oculus IR system, the first two can go between $20 to $50 and $100 respectively. Assuming they cheapen things and use these products for equivalents, or even strike up an agreement with Leap Motion and Microsoft, the economy of scale can reduce costs well below $100. But to make things easier, let's just sum that up as $150 or $250 in total if you want two of them. I'd include the mic as a factor of cost, but really they might as well not have one for how cheap they can be in terms of cost. I'd put it in as either no cost if you don't really care, or $50 if you want to have a decent solution. The last bit is optional depending on whether or not we use their rig to a T, but if you just want an artificial boundary, this really shouldn't cost you anything at all, as you can just use a chaperone style system a la the Htc Vibe. If you opt for an omnidirectional treadmill like the Omni, then we have to add $700. Summing things up, we get a price range between $550 on the low end and $1,600 on the high end. This is all not including a virtual reality gaming PC, which at the time of this post can go for about $1,000 if you want to use up-to-date components. We can go on and on about this, but that can be a subject worth making another video on in that of itself, and I plan on making an updated virtual reality rig video anyway, so we can discuss things more there. Moving forward, we have the actual game scenarios in Step 3 and 4. Step 3 revolved around the players walking around the Town of Beginnings, exploring the area till they meet up with the other players. I can't help but feel that the scale of this alpha is far too small to provide anything meaningful to really comment on. Only 3 or so players at a time in a small area doesn't really warrant the massive of virtual reality, massively multiplayer online role-playing game. As a simulation of the Town of Beginnings though, it seems rather decent in scope. Apparently, players were guided around by a weird crystal thing around the town. They had the ability to use the menu, probably not unlike Hawk Games demo from a while and, I suppose recently, back, and it even had a mirror to let players see themselves. This is a particularly nice touch since the players would otherwise not be able to see the results of their scan of their face. Even in my development experience, seeing yourself in VR and responding to that is a very interesting experience. After the Town of Beginnings came the last step in Step 4, the combat scenario. Here, players were provided a sword and were made to do battle with kobolds before the appearance of the final boss, the Gleam Eyes Ancestor. Technology-wise, it is very basic. I don't recall seeing anyone running around in this scenario, which makes me wonder if this was disabled for this part. I kind of recall reading some impressions of users where they felt genuinely intimidated by the experience, but you can feel that even in a regular virtual reality headset without the extras. Other than that, there's not really all that much to comment on here. With that, we've covered the event. As you can all probably gather, this wasn't all that impressive to me. I've already covered this in my last video, but this bears reiterating. Virtual reality really hasn't progressed very much for those of you that are looking for the most sophisticated rigs outside of just getting a better headset. Speaking personally, it's totally disappointing, but from another perspective, it shouldn't come as a surprise. I'm not a business major, but looking at all we've discussed so far, the reasons why a virtual reality MMO Sword Art Online isn't being made seem to revolve around the lack of an obvious means of profit on the investment at this point in time. AAA MMOs aren't as common a sight as they used to be in the early and late 2000s. There are plenty of free-to-play options out there and a few standouts, but being an MMO from a popular brand isn't a guarantee of success anymore, and due to the cost to develop tending to be in the hundreds of millions of dollars, even for basic ones, it may far outstrip the perceived market for Sword Art Online. Star Wars: The Old Republic was based on one of the most successful and popular media franchises there is, likely dwarfing the scale of Sword Art Online's community, yet even it's on the fight to keep its player base appeased. Several big profile MMOs have been shuttered into other projects or cancelled outright, a la Blizzard's Project Titan becoming Overwatch and EverQuest Next just going up and dying. Even the kings of the MMO world, World of Warcraft, are losing players regularly and have even stopped reporting numbers for its subscriptions. MMOs are expensive beasts to maintain, and building an MMO of the scale that would be needed for Sword Art Online would be downright brutal on any company. Bandai Namco owns Sword Art Online's games rights at this moment in time and seems to be valued at around $4 billion. MMOs cost upwards of $50 million to make, and that's without considering the contingencies that would need to be in place for VR demands. Sword Art Online Lost Song hasn't even sold 1 million units on well-proliferated platforms like the PlayStation Vita and PlayStation 4. Attempting to sell it in VR, a medium on its nascent stages, with either the PSVR as a low-end target or that $1,600 plus $1,000 gaming rig target, probably wouldn't even approach being able to give them enough of a market to have a good return on investment, even if they sold the game for $100 with a subscription and microtransactions. What's more, Sword Art Online as an MMORPG suffers from a problem that many of you might even find ironic. It's not designed to be enduring like most MMORPGs. MMOs are games that thrive off of taking as much of their players' lives as they possibly can. They regularly receive updates, patches, content, and the like just to keep on running and keeping their players invested. Fundamentally, Sword Art Online was never designed for this. While the game has a VR MMORPG as its label, Kayaba Akihiko designed the game to be a world where he could stand above it as God. Gameplay encourages physicality in upfront battles and has the dire consequence of permadeath, both in-game and IRL, to prevent people from leaving his control. Don't know about you, but I don't know of many proper MMOs that feature permadeath on this level, especially if you have a player that gets 10,000 hours in a game and now it's like, oh yeah, goodbye, it's all gone. Yeah, that would be something harsh to see. And then there are the game's items and other systems where they have events exclusive to individual players or parties, something that can only possibly occur within even the slightest bit of reasonability in an MMORPG with only 10,000 players or a very small amount of players, since there'd be a very tight-knit community and it would help create a sense of continuity. But in a proper MMO with hundreds of thousands if not millions of players, I'm pretty sure people would be pretty miffed if there was only one Excalibur to go around. Lastly, there's the whole matter of the game having an ending point of 100 floors. If we were to release Sword Art Online as a progressive project with batches of floors, we're going to be hard limited by the fact that at floor 100, there are no more floors to add, and the only hope for continued interest is the Cardinal system's dynamic quest generation, the community, and gameplay mastery. Kayaba's vision for an MMO was never designed with endurance in mind. The game was going to end one way or another, whether it be from all the players dying, players' bodies all deteriorating too far and them dying naturally, every player in the game dying in battle, the game being completed, or rather, what seemed to have been his endgame to the beginning, he himself dying. At some point, Sword Art Online was supposed to end. For an MMO publisher, the idea that you'll just have to cultivate a game for years or decades even, only to have it shut down because of an eventual design target, seems absolutely asinine. The game may as well be an overly long single-player RPG with multiplayer sprinkled in for that kind of logic. There just isn't enough assurance on that kind of a project to generate enough profit or merit a project of the scale of an MMO. This is probably why we're seeing Bandai Namco engaging with things the way that they are with Sword Art Online as a property. They're releasing smaller, simpler games on the PlayStation Portable, PlayStation Vita, PlayStation 3, and PlayStation 4, the platforms most of the SAO audience in Japan and worldwide are most likely to have. From time to time, we hear about other media franchises getting in on Sword Art Online, such as Mabinogi and Vindictus having Sword Art Online stuff. In addition, while the massively multiplayer online is a bit hard to manage, the current crops of Sword Art Online games already show the smaller scale multiplayer games are more manageable for Bandai Namco with the Sword Art Online IP. Until virtual reality reaches mass proliferation, MMOs become a hot genre again, and/or one of the Sword Art Online games sells in excess of 1 million or so units, I don't think we'll have much luck hearing about a VR MMORPG, or even a regular MMORPG for that matter, out of Bandai Namco anytime soon. At this point, we already know that making a game like Sword Art Online is possible. The titular can of this video has remained yes for the past 3 years straight now. Maybe we should ask whether or not we will make Sword Art Online today, or even if we should make Sword Art Online today. If we ask these kinds of questions, the answer changes. The former seems firmly cemented into no territory at this point in time, for corporates at the very least, or anybody who seems to have the ability to do something about it, though the latter question is really up to us. If you ask me personally, I'd actually hope they'd legitimately wait till 2022 and release Sword Art Online then as a tie-in with some kind of new hardware or something, just to really hype things up and pay homage to the show. At the same time though, guys, I'm getting tired of waiting for virtual reality to get up and running. I'm sick and tired of hoping that a larger company will do the work for us. that the industry will continue to grow at a breakneck speed, and of being disappointed. I've got my Oculus Rift CV1 in some time. I'll see what I can cook up for myself, and you guys too, if fate allows it. Thank you very much for watching this video, everyone. This has been Markystal, logging out.